So, in the last video, I mentioned that I want to make a comic, but I have no idea how. I talked to a friend at work who is a writing major and got some advice on where I should start. I know for my own method of creating and managing projects that I need to have some sort of timeline or plan set. So, I created a corkboard. On this corkboard, I can put up all of the bullet points that I can cross off from there. And you guys will see that in real time as we update this corkboard from video to video. But the first thing we need to do is actually put some stuff on it. So after consulting with my friend, I got some ideas on what I need to actually create a story. And the first thing that I think I'm going to need here is an outline. An outline is not the entire story itself, it's just the sort of moment to moment, story arc to story arc details, sort of say, like keyframes in animation, where it's just the bits that really matter for telling the story, key events, and how they tie into each other. After that, as a artist and illustrator needing to make a comic, I'm also going to need some character designs. I know what the world is sort of going to look like, and that's what you're seeing in the background. We'll discuss that in a different video, but knowing that has already given me a step forward, but I need to actually get into the character designs for how the world is going to look and the people inside of it. From there, another bullet point is I need to figure out how to deliver the deliverables. If you are unfamiliar with the term deliverable, it's just the final product. If you order something on Amazon, the thing you order is the deliverable. It's the thing you're actually getting. And the delivery of it is just how it's going to get to you. So in this case, what I'm talking about is how I'm actually going to get the comic out there into the world. I have another friend who has made comics before. I'm probably going to pick their brain about the site they use in order to actually deliver their comic to people in a free format and the pros and cons of that and that sort of stuff. From here, we get a little bit more in depth for what this actual 10 weeks is going to be like. I'm going to need specifically the chapter 1 storyboard, so not just the outline, but an actual storyboard. This is much closer to what the actual final comic is going to look like. It's instead of just being the big key events, this is much more like, okay, here's this page, this page, this page. This is what's going to happen on each of these, actually telling the story of chapter 1 here. From there, I can turn that into a draft, and then turning the draft into the actual final product. I don't want to have these just pinned on the board like this. I want to have it be a little nice, and I want to put other stuff on this board. So let's take all of these and put them on a nice little pinned note here. And since we're putting this up here, we should also put the other very important thing under this board, and that is, of course, the actual deadline. Chapter 1 is due on 3/12, so have quite a bit of time here yet. Again, this board, we're going to be returning to it multiple times to cross out stuff, so that way we get to see in real time as closer to the completion of chapter 1, each of these being crossed out, and as new stuff pops up, we can add it to the board pretty simply and take it off when it's done. So let's move on to what I've actually got done right now. I have been working on this for quite a bit, so I have a good amount already planned out for the outline. I was really struggling with how to actually start chapter 1, really trying to think about what all needs to go into the first chapter of the story. How do I introduce people to the world? What do I need to tell people? All of that sort of stuff. Actually, talking with a person who has a writing degree has really helped me figure out what I need for that. And so, what I figured out is before I know what I need to introduce people to, I need to know some of my story. Because I figure that I should be thinking about it as if I'm going to tell someone my story, what I have done in this Act 1, what do I need to tell them beforehand about the world, about the characters, and about the setup before we can get into the actual story here. So that's how I've been thinking about for chapter 1. In order to figure out what I need to put in chapter 1, I first need to figure out what the first act is going to be about. So from the first act, we'll go into the second act, and I need to figure out the stuff in Act 2 before I can figure out what all I need to put into Act 1. This is, I think about it like Chekhov's gun. Obviously, Chekhov's gun is a very famous writing thing. I don't know if it's a tip or whatever. But setting up stuff that's going to happen beforehand, that way it's not a surprise later on. It's called Chekhov's gun because they say, like, if a character puts a gun on the mantle in chapter 1, someone needs to be shot in chapter 10 with that gun. I'm thinking about that with, like, Act 2 here. What I put in Act 2 is going to have to be alluded to first in Act 1. As such, what happens in Act 1 needs to be alluded to in chapter 1. That way stuff is set up. This gives me a pretty good idea on what I actually need to put into chapter 1, and it gives me a really good starting position. So that's where I'm at currently. Thank you very much for watching video 2 and video 1 here. Next time I come back here, I should hopefully have a outline for chapter 1 and be moving on to a storyboard step. I would like to figure out more for Act 2, but I know that this can wait for right now. I have ideas. I know the general story beats for the greater story, but setting them out in some more beat by beat like this, don't quite have figured out for Act 2 yet. And I need to finish that before I start Act 1, so it's probably going to happen with the next 10-week period. But for now, I need to focus on Chapter 1. So that's where I'll come back to you guys next time. Thank you so much for joining me again, and I hope you have a wonderful day.